and welcome to my office hours. Today I'm going to be doing some analysis for this book called Monster by Walter Dean Myers. Now I'm only doing the analysis for pages 1 through 88 and I actually haven't read past that, so I'm just going to be giving you my thoughts on those pages, and perhaps when I finish the entire book I'll give you an analysis of the entire book. But I find that this is a very interesting book into getting perspective on another person's life, somebody who lives in an urban area in Harlem, 148th Street, I believe, somebody who has been accused of felony murder, and it highlights a lot of problems within society. So our main character, Steve Harmon, is in jail and on trial for felony murder. He was part of a robbery of a drugstore, and during that robbery, the drugstore owner, Aguinaldo Nesbitt, was killed, and that's why it's a felony murder. So Steve Harmon narrates everything that is going on in his life as a film. I believe he goes to Stuyvesant High School, which is an excellent high school in Manhattan for gifted and extremely intelligent students, or at least students who have tested very well and have been able to get in. And he either goes there or he's part of a film club. I haven't quite figured out if he goes to that school or if he just does extracurricular film club there. But he sees his life as a movie. So a lot of the words that he uses are film direction words like cut to or close up or voiceover. And he sees the trial as a movie set that almost like he's not a part of. And I think it's a tactic to separate himself from what is really going on in his life, because it's such a scary thing to be facing life in jail, perhaps even a death sentence. I believe this book is really good because it shows the problem of mass incarceration within the United States. Okay? It shows mass incarceration of African Americans, especially young black men, going into the prison system. This shows the feelings of despair for the people living in those neighborhoods who lack opportunities and are in the cycle of poverty, as well as the prison system. Being sentenced to jail decreases employment and income mobility. Living in high poverty neighborhoods for multiple generations also adds barriers to upward mobility, as well as the segregation of schools that these low-income neighborhoods are experiencing. The food deserts in the neighborhood and lack of thriving businesses does not leave a lot of opportunity and choice for the people within those neighborhoods. So since this is an analysis of the first part of the book, I wanted to go over some of the characters. So we have Steve Harmon, who is our narrator, and he's involved in this felony murder. Then we have James King, who is kind of the orchestrator or the man who made the plan of doing the robbery on the drugstore. Then we have Kathy O'Brien, and she is the defense attorney for Steve Harmon. Now, she is court appointed, meaning she is free. She's not getting paid. The court says you need to defend this client because that is the law of the United States. You are allowed legal representation. Now, Kathy O'Brien does have doubts. She is not necessarily trying to prove the innocence of Steve Harmon, but she's trying to prove that there is some sort of reasonable doubt that makes the jurors think, well, maybe he did not murder Aguinaldo Nesbitt. Then we have Sandra Petroselli, and she's the assistant district attorney, meaning she is bringing this criminal court to case, and she defends the law and order of the state. She is the lead prosecutor. She is the prosecutor for the District of New York. Then we have Briggs, who is the defense attorney for James King. James King is the lead member who planned the robbery. Then we have Bobo Evans. He is part of the robbery and also the rat who said things to other guys in jail about the robbery going down. He apparently sold cigarettes to 2 people in jail. We have Oswaldo Cruz, who is part of the lookout in the group, but he testifies against Steve and James, saying that he was scared and was part of this plan just because he was intimidated by the other two older boys. Then we have Sal Zinzi and Bolden, and they are the witnesses testifying about the robbery based on what they heard from Bobo. They're mainly doing it to lessen their sentence, right? So you can cut a deal with the cops or the police saying, if I give you information about this crime, then you need to do something for me, and I want you to lessen my stay in jail. So they're just cutting a deal, not necessarily like out of the goodness of their heart. Then of course you have all the people in the courtroom, the jury, the judge, the stenographer, the other guards, but they're just other characters in there in pages 1 through 88. Let me take a drink before I get into the real analysis and different pages and passages of this story. Okay, so I'm going to go over the analysis of the story. Now, in the first pages, you see Monster, right? Monster, the story of my miserable life. Because right now, when we see Steve Harmon, he's in jail. Do you think he likes it? Would you like it? No, he is miserable. He hates being in jail. Nobody would ever want to be in jail. Right? And it says, the incredible story of how one guy's life was turned around by a few events and how he might spend the rest of his life behind bars, right? So this is kind of the idea that can one moment define your entire life? And he's being seen as this monster, this murderer by the jury. And if he's convicted, he'll be a monster in society's eyes. Then we meet on page 12 Kathy O'Brien, who's the defense attorney, and it does not seem like, to me, it does not seem like she has a lot of faith in him. She kind of is like, this is my job, I have to defend you. You need to make it as easy for me to defend you, right? We're just trying to look for mistakes that the prosecutor is making. But she goes so far as to kind of treat him like a child, saying like, they're pushing for the death penalty. You'd better take this trial very, very seriously. Don't turn around and wave to any of your friends. It's okay to acknowledge your mother. Like, if you are going on trial for murder, I sure as hell know I'd be serious, like dead serious. But she kind of acts like, well, you don't mess around here. Like, it seems like she has no faith in him and has to tell him the type of tone he needs to take. So just seeing that, like, it seems to me that she thinks he has no type of consciousness or education. And then on page 17, we meet the judge. And he is a 60-year-old New York judge and already bored with this case. Already bored with this case. Like, if I was on trial for murder, that would be the most important thing, the biggest thing going on in my life. But it seems like if this judge has been around the block, this is probably happening all the time. These are probably the cases that he's always seeing, right? He's bored of it. Been there, done that. And that kind of speaks to the idea of mass incarceration and of young black men constantly flowing through the jury system and being put in jail. Page 23, we see Miss Sandra Petroselli, the prosecutor, give her statement to the jury. She's doing her like opening statement, and she says, there will be evidence that prior to the robbery there was a plan or a conspiracy, meaning, yeah, it was planned. They planned to stand outside the drugstore and impede anyone chasing the robber. So they had somebody to stand outside of the drugstore. Then he said, the planners of this robbery that left a man dead was to go to the store prior to the robbery to check it out, to make sure that there was no police in the store. She's basically talking about Steve, saying that he was a planner in the robbery. His job was to go in, check out that there were no cops around, and then you could go in. So, but she said the planners of this robbery left a man dead, saying that he was the one who left Aguinaldo Nesbitt dead. She also says, on page 21, most people in our community are decent, hardworking citizens who pursue their own interests. So most people in society are good. They're fine. But There are also monsters in our communities. People who are willing to steal and kill people who disregard the rights of others. And she's talking about Steve and James King, that there are monsters in society. And if there's a monster in society, we need to put them in jail. On page 26, Kathy O'Brien, gives her opening statement for her client, being Steve Harmon, saying, "The laws also protect the accused, and that is the wonder and beauty of the American system of justice. We apply the law equally to both sides. The law that protects society protects all of society. We will show that the evidence that the state will produce is seriously flawed and there's reasonable doubt." So she is not saying that he is not guilty of the felony, but she believes that there are mistakes and there should be reasonable doubt. If you're a juror, if you're on the jury and you need to say if a man is guilty or innocent, if you have a doubt that he is guilty, then you need to say that I believe he's innocent. There is a doubt to his guilt. Then on page 50, this is a flashback of Steve's life when he was talking to James King and another lady in the neighborhood, Peaches. And I find it very interesting because it shows us the neighborhood and the opportunities, or let's say lack of opportunities, that are present in these boys' lives, right? Before this page, you can see that two little girls were jumping rope near a pile of garbage. So we can see that the neighborhood is not well taken care of. There is garbage all over the place and not like an area that is full of greenery or a park for these little girls to be in. So we have James King, and he says, "I need to get paid, man. I ain't got nothing between my butt and the ground but a rag," meaning I need money. We all need money. Steve says, "I hear that," meaning I agree. Then Peaches says, "You can't even hardly make it these days. They talking about cutting welfare, cutting Social Security, and anything else that makes life a little easy. They might as well bring back slavery times if you ask me." Meaning we don't have any jobs. There are no jobs in this area. All we can do is rely on welfare or Social Security. They're not given a lot of opportunities. And then I would believe that the school systems in this area are probably not the best, because although segregation ended many years ago, there is still segregation within the school system today, being that if you're in a poor neighborhood, the school near you is the school that you have to go to. And they're probably less well funded. They have less access to maybe different technology or books. And there is still inequality. Peaches says banks is where the money is. Then somebody else says, no, bank money is serious. The man comes down hard for bank money, meaning we can't rob a bank. If we rob a bank, the government is going to get us. Then he says, you cop from somebody with a green card or an illegal, they don't even report you. Meaning, well, you need to pick who you can rob from. Like if you go to rob an illegal person, the cops aren't going to care. Then Peaches says, restaurant owners got money too. That's the only thing left in our neighborhood. Restaurants, liquor stores, and drugstores. Showing me that it's very depleted, their area. We call areas that don't have a lot of grocery stores or a lot of fresh food deserts, and it seems like where they live might be a food desert. Like there are restaurants, I don't know, maybe they're serving kind of low quality food, but liquor stores and drugstores. If you have a lot of drugstores, that means you need a lot of medicine to medicate any ailments. But anyway, Steve goes on saying, or King says, you got what you got, young blood. I don't know. And then Johnny says, I didn't know you've been down, meaning I didn't know you were open to stealing. And it seems like this is the first interaction that Steve has with James King, the one who orchestrated the robbery. Then I'm going to cut to O'Brien talking to James, and she says, your case is not looking good. They believe you're a monster. The jury thinks that you are guilty. And she says, half of those jurors, no matter what they said when we questioned them, when we picked the jury, believed you were guilty the moment they laid eyes on you, right? So that's really not fair. You're not supposed to have a bias when you're going in. You're supposed to say innocent before proving guilty, but they believe he's guilty, right? So they're accusing you of being a monster. The jury can ask itself, why should the prosecution lie? Our job is to show that she's not lying, but simply made a mistake. Right? So she's just trying to find any little mistake to show, no, Steve couldn't be the one who killed Aguinaldo Nesbitt. Another interesting thing I find in the book is when Steve talks about what jail is like, and he says it is the worst place in the world. Everybody always just wants to fight. If you're looking at somebody, they might say, or they will say, what are you looking at? And they'll start beating you up. So you kind of just always have to look angry, keep your eyes down. He talks about the rape that happens in jail. He talks about how he has to go to the bathroom in front of all these people, and that's still very strange for him, but it's not a place you want to be. And I also find it interesting what Steve says about the two witnesses, Zinzi and Bolden, because O'Brien was saying she's going to use these witnesses as a trail that leads to you. And Steve says, no, I think she's actually just using them to show the jury that they look just like us. They sound just as bad as us, and they are in jail. She's just showing them that we are all the same, and we all belong in jail because we all look the same, we all talk the same. That's kind of an interesting insight of how the jail system is filled with young African American men and the mass incarceration problem for Black America. So in the beginning portion of pages 1 through 88, we're seeing the defense and the prosecution give their statements, do their questioning, bring in their witnesses, and we are seeing the thoughts of Steve Harmon. Is he a monster? Is he not a monster? Was he wrongfully accused? Was this one moment in his life? I don't know. I still have to continue reading to develop my thoughts. Please leave down in the comments your thoughts of the beginning portion of the book. If you think he is guilty, if you think he is not guilty, if you think one moment in your life does not define your entire life, I would love to know what you think. Please stay tuned for my part 2 analysis of the book, as well as my part 3 for the different themes and issues that this book deals with. Well, that's all I think I have for you today. Please keep learning and stay classy. Bye.